Greetings, my beloved clients and friends. I'm back with another video. I've heard some positive feedback from the ones we've done, so I wanted to do another one. So I want to talk to you today about, I've gotten some calls, not recently, but over the past month or two, of clients saying, you know what, I saw this, I read this article or I heard something on the news about one of the companies we're invested in, and it wasn't very favorable. And I just wanted to know what you thought about that. Or are you worried? So on and so forth. Well, so I want to say something about that. I mentioned in another video that one of the characteristics of 10 baggers is that they have raving fans. Think Apple or Tesla or Costco or Nike, Amazon, right? They have fans that just talk about this company, how great it is, Disney. But they also, when it's an opportune time to invest, they have strong dissenters. There's a strong voice of dissension around this company, naysayers. Think Tesla and Bitcoin. There's still a lot of people that have serious doubts about their future, right? And so, and I said that that's a sign of a company that has the potential to be a 10-bagger, this big vocal group of naysayers. And I want to talk in detail about why that is and why it's a good sign. So those naysayers represent what I would call potential energy. And potential energy is something I learned about in 12th grade in physics. And the illustration that I have in my head is, let's say there's this vase, this glass vase, and it's tall and thin, and it's full of marbles. And it's on the edge of a high counter, and the counter is made of granite, and the counter is wet. And the floor beneath the counter is concrete. Okay, so that vase full of marbles has a lot of potential energy. A small nudge would push that thing over the edge, and it would fall, crash on the concrete floor, break, and spread marbles all over the place, releasing all that potential energy. Okay, so another example of potential energy is a bow and arrow, right? You put the arrow on the bow and you pull the arrow back, and that represents the potential energy. And when that potential energy is released, it sends the arrow flying in the opposite direction, right? So these naysayers represent potential energy, meaning they don't get it now, but at some point they could be converted and they could represent buyers. Okay, and that's a good thing to have a lot of potential energy. Okay, so when those naysayers come out, right, one day they could be convinced. And so there's this really interesting book called Crossing the Chasm, and it's about the life cycle of a product, and that when a new product or service comes out, the first buyers are what they call the visionaries, and they'll buy this product just because it's the hot new thing, because they see something in it, and when no one else has taken a chance on this. Think about Tesla, for example. There were visionaries that bought this, and they didn't care that it took 8 hours to charge, or there was no charging station infrastructure. That it was really difficult to actually operate a Tesla in the early years. But they saw the vision, right? And they were excited. They didn't care that it was difficult. And then the next group after the visionaries is the early adopters, and they're very similar to the visionaries. And then after the early adopters start adopting it and giving good reviews, and it's been out there for a while, and the initial glitches have been ironed out, then the early majority starts to dip their toe into the market. And this represents a much larger group of buyers. And then after them, after it's kind of really started gain a lot of acceptance, the late adopters start buying this. And this is also a very large group. And then at the end, there's the laggards, the last ones on the bus. And they tend to be the last ones on the bus for everything. But so the opportunity is to buy this thing before the early majority and the late majority gets in, right? And when that happens, there's a lot of dissenters. There's only a few voices that are saying, oh, this thing's great. And there's a lot of people that are really not yet convinced, right? And that's the opportunity. When there's a lot of people that are not yet convinced, take that as a good sign that there's a lot of potential energy left in this investment, let's say, applying it to what we're talking about. So Bitcoin, for example, has had a big run, but there's a lot of naysayers. So that indicates to me that there's still a huge potential energy. There's a huge potential for those naysayers to ultimately be converted and to drive the price up much higher. Same thing with Tesla, right? There's still a lot of naysayers, which is a good sign. Okay, let me give you an example of what it looks like when there aren't a lot of naysayers, and why, if everything you read is positive, that could actually be a bad sign. Okay, so let me take you back to February of 2001. February of 2000. I was working at Wells Fargo. I was a financial advisor there in Corona, and what the tellers would do is when they saw somebody with a lot of money, they would send them to my desk so I could talk to them about investing. So they send this guy to my desk, and this man was a 63 years old. He was a Baptist pastor. He was 2 years away from retirement, and he had an IRA, and he had in the last year finally dipped his toes into the investment arena, and he had bought 2 mutual funds, and they were both internet mutual funds. Okay, and one of them had gone up 73%. The other one had gone up 55%. Okay, and he was just very excited, confident, happy, and proud of what he had done. And actually what he did was he took money, after reviewing the performance, he took the money out of the one that was up 55%, the laggard, right, and put it all into the one that was up 73, okay? And I was shaking my head. I'm like, oh man, you should really think about diversifying. I was trying to talk to him about altering his strategy a little bit, and I was doing my best to be convincing, and I was failing. He was not hearing it. He was supremely confident in what he had done, and actually, apparently when he had done his transaction at the teller window, he had gotten a small paper cut on his hand, and apparently he must have had thin blood because it wouldn't stop bleeding. And he was sitting in my chair across from me, legs crossed, supremely confident, and sucking on his finger that wouldn't stop bleeding. And he was not hearing a word I was saying that he should diversify and get out. I couldn't convince him. He left convinced of his strategy, and he said this to me: what's the worst that could happen? That it's only averages 25%? And I was like, no, it could get much worse than that, right? And so I went home that night, and I could not sleep. I could not sleep all night. I was tossing and turning, and the reason was I had just spoke to the last guy in America that was going to buy an internet mutual fund. He was at the end of the line. Who was going to come behind this 63-year-old Baptist pastor and be the next person to buy this fund to keep taking it up higher? There was nobody left. right? The most conservative man in America had finally gotten on the bus. There was nobody in line behind him. And sure enough, this was February of 2000. In March of 2000, the market peaked. NASDAQ was over 5,000, and many of these internet bubble burst, and many of these companies, these funds like the one he had invested in, went on to go down 90% or more. And if you would have read the news in February of 2000, there were not many naysayers, if any, against this internet rally, right? So naysayers represent a healthy opportunity, a healthy pool of potential energy that as they become converted and as they finally get on the bus, they will continue to take it higher, okay? So my job as an investor is to look forward and see what the next big thing is on the horizon. And hopefully I could see it before everybody else, right? If you want me in that group of visionaries and early adopters, right? Before the early majority and late majority get on the bus, I'm gonna get on that bus, right? While the naysayer's voice is louder than the voice of those in favor. That's when the investment opportunity is greatest, okay? So I wanna wait after the visionaries and the early adopters try it to see if it works. But once it does, I wanna get on before the early majority and the late majority. And then once the laggards are in, maybe that opportunity has run its course. But so I'm not uncomfortable by a vocal group of naysayers. Let me give you a second example. And this was from 2005. Okay. I was thumbing through a magazine. I think it was Forbes or Fortune. It was one of those two. And there was this full page spread and it showed these Vegas showgirls. Now, that's not the normal picture you see in a Forbes or Fortune magazine, so obviously it caught my attention. And so I went on to read the article, and what it said was that these Vegas showgirls, between sets in their dressing room, they were on the phone with their real estate broker, and they were buying up real estate, 2, 3, 4 properties, okay? And I got that same knot in my stomach. I was like, these girls are the last ones in line. Who's gonna be in line behind them to buy the property from them so that they could realize a profit? And that article was actually about a year early. It was about a year before the peak, before the real estate bubble burst. But the same principle, right? And you would be hard pressed to find a naysayer to the real estate bubble in 2005. Okay, so don't be discouraged when there are naysayers, and actually be encouraged, because that represents a big group of potential energy, and maybe, just maybe, Jonathan sees something before them. And you know what? I read those articles too, and consider their points, and because maybe there's something I didn't see. But usually, those articles validate my opinion. So I'm not always right, but I'm not opposed to buying something when there's a large vocal group against the investment that I'm going to do. So I hope that encourages you, that maybe calms your concerns when you see those type of articles. And if you see them, feel free to send them my way, and I'll take a look, and maybe there is something that I didn't see. But bear in mind that there's a good chance that represents a large group that we're in front of, and that as they become convinced, that they will drive the price of this investment up. So that's my job, is to look through the fog and see what's on the horizon, and and be there, try to be there a little bit early, ahead of the crowd. Okay, so hopefully that helps. Hopefully you guys have a great day.